Do you think Australians should be pissed off?
I think they should be rightly concerned.
A luxury super yacht and a clifftop mansion in Bali.
$160 million seems to be excessively high.
Looks pretty good.
The businessman who got filthy rich
Contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
on the Australian taxpayer's dime.
There was a lack of due diligence.
There's no nice way to say it. The Federal Department of Home Affairs has been very fast and loose with eye-watering amounts of Australian taxpayer funds, those earned by you and me. It's done it by blindly entering into shady contracts with some even shadier businesses. Companies with suspected links to arms and drug smuggling, alleged bribery, even busting international sanctions. How do we know this? Well, it's all been revealed in a scathing report obtained by 60 Minutes, the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. But it's not just the use of money that will outrage you. It's also that as yet, nobody is being held accountable. Who wouldn't want to spend a couple of days on the Galileo, cruising off the coast of Thailand? Built to sail the world, the 55-metre super yacht is super luxurious. Big enough for 12 mates, it's not at all surprising she's worth more than $30 million. But what is shocking is she was effectively paid for by you, via government contracts.
Do you think Australians should be pissed off with what's going on down here?
I think they should be rightly concerned about the millions of taxpayer dollars that are spent this way.
The boat belongs to businessman Craig Thrupp. He also owns this beach house off the coast of Bali, a 5-bedroom villa perched on a cliff top. They're the kind of purchases only the filthy rich can make, and Craig Thrupp is indeed a very wealthy man, thanks to a 2-year federal government contract that is now the subject of intense scrutiny.
We've discovered the founding director of Paladin has made a personal profit, an estimated $160 million. Does that surprise you?
It does surprise me, but it doesn't surprise me. I suspect the profit margins in those contracts would have been very high.
$160 million seems to be excessively high.
It looks pretty good.
What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom!
In 2017, Craig Thrupp's little-known company Paladin won a massive $500 million contract to manage offshore processing for Australia's Home Affairs Department on Manus Island. Thrupp was no doubt expecting blowback from refugee advocates. But it's unlikely he ever thought his company Paladin would come under the glare of the man who once led Australia's spy agency. Since July last year, former ASIO and Defence Department boss Dennis Richardson has been investigating if Home Affairs stuffed up when giving eye-watering offshore processing contracts to relatively unknown firms like Paladin.
It was a very small entity when it initially got contracts. It got contracts in areas in respect of which it had no particular expertise. Those contracts were consistently renewed over a period of time without ever being rechecked. And it was the failure to do the proper due diligence which led to Paladin getting contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Unsurprisingly for an old spy master, for his inquiry, Richardson sought access to secret intelligence gathered by Australian agencies and spoke to cops and whistleblowers. He discovered multiple red flags that Paladin had engaged in suspected corruption in PNG, potentially on Home Affairs' dime.
Were you told that Paladin allegedly engaged in bribery?
During the course of the inquiry, yes. Yes, I was.
What do you do with that information?
We passed on relevant information to the AFP and to the National Anti-Crime Commission.
Do you think Home Affairs should have acted on warning signs that Paladin may be engaged in criminal wrongdoing, allegedly?
I think they should have pursued greater due diligence than what they did.
It gets even worse, for Paladin was not alone.
Is it correct that you found Home Affairs had contractual relationships with companies under active investigation by the Federal Police?
Yes.
Firms suspected of bribery and corruption?
Yes.
A firm whose CEO is being investigated for possible drugs and arms smuggling?
Yes.
A company implicated in suspected Iranian sanction busting and money laundering?
A company whose directors were suspected of being so involved.
For all this to have happened, there must have been one hell of a due diligence failure.
There was a lack of due diligence and there was information within the government, but it was never accessed.
Stands to reason then, though, that that failure to access readily available information led to alleged crooked companies being contracted?
That's a fair comment.
And therefore taxpayer money flowing to such alleged crooked entities?
That's a fair comment.
This scandal would never have been exposed if not for our investigation with the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age last year that forced the Albanese government to act and appoint Dennis Richardson. This came after Paladin whistleblower Ian Stewart told 60 Minutes of $3 million in suspected bribe payments and claims of other dodgy dealings.
We were approached by a number of individuals. They could offer to assist us, and in return, issues we're having around work permits or other issues in the contract would potentially go away, was the offer.
Sorry, just to get this really clear, you're saying you are offered help in return for a payment. That's a bribe. It's quid pro quo, yeah?
I don't know what the definition of bribe in terms
Well,
of...
I'll tell you what a definition of a bribe is giving you a business advantage in return for a payment that is not appropriately due.
Yeah, so I think, I guess you could term it in that sense. They were definitely asking for payments in return to assist us.
In PNG and Nauru, the impact of Australian cowboy companies operating on behalf of our government continues to make ugly waves. Rodney, do you think money was used to pay bribes?
Of course, yes.
PNG clan leader Rodney Pen was Paladin's Manus Island business partner, but fell out with the firm, alleging he was denied his share of the $500 million contracts funded by Australian taxpayers. He's reported his concerns about Paladin to PNG police and lodged a court case seeking millions he claims he was contractually owed. Do you think Australian taxpayer money was misused, was abused?
Of course, yes.
Craig Thrupp now has done very well from Paladin. He owns a yacht, lives in a mansion, has made over $100 million. How does that leave you feeling?
Well, I think it's so selfish. That's the best way I can describe Craig. Doesn't care about anyone.
And while there's no suggestion Thrupp was personally involved in wrongdoing, Dennis Richardson has confirmed the federal police has launched bribery probes into his firm and a second Australian company, Canstruct. Richardson also says the AFP has its own questions to answer about a third contractor it suspected was rotten to the core.
The AFP itself had been investigating a particular individual for foreign bribery offences, was aware that that person was in a contractual relationship with the Department of Home Affairs, but at no stage did they advise Home Affairs. In fact, Home Affairs became aware of the AFP investigation through a media release.
That seems simply inexplicable.
It's a breakdown in communication.
To be clear, you're saying the AFP is investigating an alleged bribe payer, and for 3 years they failed to tell Home Affairs, their own department, that Home Affairs is separately paying that alleged bribe payer to run offshore processing.
That's quite right.
Former federal police officer and anti-corruption investigator Tam Glin has analysed the declassified and redacted report produced by the Richardson Inquiry and which was leaked to 60 Minutes. McLaughlin says while it calls for reforms and makes clear the government's current key offshore processing contractor is above board, it holds no one from Home Affairs or in politics truly accountable for the past failures Richardson uncovered.
Why is more public accountability around this so important?
It gives people an assurance that the questions are being asked. A report done behind closed doors where the outcomes are uncertain and the criminal investigations can take, justifiably so, many years. The purpose of a public hearing in an anti-corruption body is to shine a light, is to give people confidence that government is being held to account.
Does a light need to be shone in this circumstance?
It appears to be a matter that would greatly benefit from more public scrutiny.
Who should be held responsible for this failure?
Oh, it is senior people within Home Affairs. It is not people at the working level in the contract and procurement area.
And have they been held to account?
I did not name anyone, as many people have moved on, and I believe the important thing to do in a review of this kind is to see what can be learnt and what can be changed, rather than publicly humiliate individuals. But having said that, we did not have the investigative powers to pursue those kind of inquiries to a point where you could personally hold a gun to someone's head.
We made multiple attempts to contact Craig Thrupp, but received no reply.
Hello, I'm Nick McKenzie. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. Don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.